I was 22 when I started thinking of my life in two parts, before that night and after. My husband and I had been together since we were teenagers. High school sweethearts, people used to say, as if the phrase itself were a guarantee of happiness. We had broken up and gotten back together more times than either of us liked to admit, but somehow we always found our way back. Familiarity can feel like destiny when you're young. By the time I was 20, we were married. It felt grown-up, brave, romantic. It felt like choosing certainty over chaos. For a while, that choice worked. We lived in a small apartment with thin walls and neighbors who argued loudly in the evenings. Money was always tight. We argued about small things, dishes, bills, his habit of promising more than he could deliver, but we also laughed a lot. We had routines. Cheap takeout on Fridays, laundry on Sundays, falling asleep with the TV still on. I thought that was what love looked like. Imperfect, repetitive, steady. Then came the bachelor party. It was supposed to be harmless. One of his old Navy friends was getting married, and a few of them were reuniting for the weekend. My husband was excited in a boyish way I hadn't seen in a while, talking about old stories I'd heard too many times. I kissed him goodbye and told him not to drink too much. He laughed and promised he wouldn't. By 11 that night, I was already in bed, half asleep, scrolling through my phone. That was when the message came from a number I didn't recognize. It was one of the wives someone I had met only once. He's really drunk. Can you come get him? He can't drive. There was an address attached. Stared at the screen longer than I should have. Part of me was annoyed. Another part was worried. I pulled on jeans and a hoodie, tied my hair up quickly, and drove across town with the radio off, my thoughts loud in the silence. The house was bigger than I expected. Loud music leaked through the walls, and the driveway was crowded with cars. I hesitated before knocking. A man I didn't recognize opened the door. He smelled strongly of alcohol, his eyes glassy. His posture loose and aggressive in that careless way drunk people sometimes have. "Yeah, for 'em?" he asked, already sounding irritated. I nodded and said my husband's name. He scoffed. "Figures. Lightweight. Always was." I forced a polite smile and stepped inside. The living room was a mess of empty bottles, overturned cups, laughter echoing from somewhere deeper in the house. He pointed down a hallway and muttered something about the guest room. I found my husband sprawled across the bed, shoes still on, breathing heavily, completely unconscious. I shook him gently, then harder. Nothing. I brushed his hair back from his forehead, feeling a mix of frustration and affection twist together in my chest. When I turned around, the same man from the door was leaning in the frame. He threw up all over the bathroom. He said flatly, "You're paying for that, or you're cleaning it." My stomach dropped. He grabbed my wrist not painfully, but firmly and pulled me down the hallway to show me the mess. The bathroom smelled awful. The sight of it made my throat tighten. "I don't have money for this," I whispered, embarrassed, exhausted, overwhelmed. My eyes burned before I could stop it. Something shifted in his expression when he saw me crying. His voice softened just a little. He told me to sit down, offered me a drink, said it would calm my nerves. I should have said no. I didn't. We sat at the kitchen table while the noise of the party continued around us. He talked about the Navy, about how hard things had been back then, about how people owed him things. I nodded and listened, grateful for the distraction from my own spiraling thoughts. One drink became two. By the time I stood up again, my head felt light, my judgment slower, blurred around the edges. He stood too close when he spoke. I remembered joking weakly that my husband was still in the other room, unconscious. He smiled in a way that made my skin prickle. The next moments are tangled in my memory, not because I don't remember them, but because I don't know how to label them. I followed him into the garage when he said we should talk somewhere quieter. I told myself I was just trying to keep the situation from escalating. I told myself I wanted to get my husband home safely. But fear and confusion have a way of tying your thoughts into knots. What happened there changed me, not in a dramatic, cinematic way. There was no single moment where I clearly thought, this is the point of no return. It was a slow collapse of boundaries, a feeling of being steered by someone else's will, while my own voice grew smaller and quieter inside my head. When it was over, I didn't feel relief. I felt hollow. I dressed in silence, hands shaking, stomach twisting with something that wasn't quite shame and wasn't quite anger, but lived somewhere between the two. Ito avoided my eyes as he walked back into the house, already acting as if I were invisible. My husband was still unconscious when I checked on him again. A different man stood by the door this time, telling me brusquely that they would bring him home in the morning. I nodded. I walked out alone. The drive home felt unreal, like I was watching myself from outside my body. Streetlights blurred into long yellow streaks. My chest felt tight, as if I had forgotten how to breathe normally. When I finally lay in our bed, I stared at the ceiling until the sun started to rise. I didn't tell my husband what happened. At first, I told myself it was because I didn't want to hurt him. Then I told myself it was because I didn't even know how to explain it. Eventually, I admitted the truth. I was afraid of what it would make me. Weeks passed, then months. His friend moved away. Life returned to its routines. My husband apologized for drinking too much. I forgave him as who is it, but something inside me had shifted. I became distant without knowing how to explain why. I laughed at the same jokes, cooked the same dinners, kissed him goodnight, but there was a thin wall between who I was and who I pretended to be. I replayed that night more times than I wanted to admit. Not just the fear, not just the confusion, but the strange feeling of being wanted, of being seen as something powerful, instead of small and tired and predictable. That realization scared me more than anything else. I started noticing other men, the way they looked at me, the way their attention made me feel solid, defined, awake. I hated myself for it, and yet I chased that feeling in quiet. Secret ways, different clothes, different makeup, longer walks alone. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself I deserved something that was mine. The guilt never left, but it changed shape. It stopped being sharp and became dull, like a stone I carried in my pocket everywhere I went. Heavy, familiar. By the time I finally admitted silently, only to myself, that I wanted more than the life I had built, the thought didn't shock me anymore. It only made sense. I loved my husband in the way you love a childhood home, deeply, tenderly, but with the knowledge that you have already outgrown its walls. Amen. So my life became divided again, not just into before and after that night, but into what people could see and what I kept hidden. A young wife with a simple life, and a woman learning slowly and dangerously how easily desire can rewrite everything you thought you were. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below.